So I think I've spoken about this before in another video, but I've just been really reflecting on it recently about all the things maybe that happened before and happened afterwards and whether they're relevant. And so I thought I would just talk about it in a video. So I went through a bit of a period of, this was about 1.5 years into doing Kundalini Activation, where it felt like I was really holding on to control. So it felt like I was really gripped tight to this sense of control, and maybe a lot of the things that I'd wanted to happen in my life were kind of being held onto really tightly. And things that it felt like I was really attached to those things. Kind of like a future version of myself, or kind of vision that I would have for myself, or things like money, security. And there was a moment of where I was just kind of surrendering, I suppose, surrendering to loosening up on, kind of loosening up of those things, and part of my identity, like not really wanting to pin myself down to a specific identity in the way that I had wanted to before. And there was a kind of grief around this, but also a kind of loosening up and a kind of surrendering to the loosening up, if that makes sense. And there was a kind of realization, I think, that I wasn't in control of any of it. And I think that sense of not being in control of any of it, was kind of scary. I mean, this felt different to like an intellectual understanding of not being in control of life, obviously. This was more of a feeling state, I suppose, of really understanding that I couldn't control anything. And then really I kind of forgot about that, And I don't know what the time period was, but maybe like a month later or something like that. It wasn't too much time. It felt like the mind I had detached from the mind in a good way. So obviously when you say you've detached from the mind, it can sound a bit like you've gone crazy, but I don't mean it in that way. I mean it in the sense that I wasn't really believing my thoughts anymore. And it was as if, I suppose, I was constantly in that watching space, rather than, a lot of the time we feel like we're wearing our thoughts, but this just felt like I was just watching them, and I wasn't trying to watch them either. That was just naturally what was happening. And there was less belief in them, so it just, sometimes it seemed quite laughable what they were saying. And there was kind of more space, between me and the thoughts. And from this place, everything started to feel like, I suppose, like I was in a flow state. And instead of feeling like I was making all the choices through my mind of what to do. It felt like the body was kind of just going yes or no and deciding from that point of view. And it felt like everything that happened in a kind of, this kind of happened over about 2 or 3 month period. And it felt like everything that was happening from in life was just kind of happening through this feeling of being more in the flow of life. And the mind, instead of me going to the mind and making all of the choices through the mind, it was almost, it kind of felt like the body was just deciding, or the body was just saying yes or no. And when I used the mind, it was more just as a kind of tool that I could then see very clearly. There was a kind of clarity there where I could decide whether I wanted to take on what it was saying or not take on what it was saying. And so there was this clarity of mind. And it seemed like a lot of what was going on in my life back then, at that time, a lot of things changed. So I suddenly started doing something else. And it didn't really feel like I was doing it. It just felt like it was now just kind of happening, and it was just naturally moving in that direction. And a bit the same way a river flows, it was just finding its kind of, its natural path. And that's kind of how it felt. And then recently, somebody, and I was talking about it with someone, somebody asked me, why do you think it just stopped? Because I don't feel like that now. So it was just a 2 to 3 month period. And it's funny actually, because usually I was thinking maybe this is just another glimpse, because usually with a glimpse, it's like so obvious, whatever's changed is so radically different to how you're normally perceiving things that you just cannot miss it, Like if you've suddenly gone from the feeling of separation to unity consciousness, that is going to be something that you notice. You can't miss it. But with this, it was like I had to it felt very natural, and I had to kind of take a moment and go, something's different here. Like I feel different. Everything feels so much easier. Everything was so easy. It was like I'd been making life so hard before, and now everything's just flowing really naturally and easily. And, it was like I didn't have to really put in lots of effort, because it was happening naturally. And yeah, so somebody asked me what happened, why did it end? And because it felt very natural, I had to kind of notice that something was different. So I had to kind of go, hang on a sec, this is what's different. I'm relating to my mind differently. I'm relating to the world differently. Everything is different. Everything feels different in a kind of subtle way. And then when I think about why that kind of came to an end, I didn't really know how to answer the question at the time, but I've been really thinking about it, and I was thinking, well, because I think a fear came in that was kind of like, but don't relax too much. Don't relax too much, because you're so relaxed now. Because there was a feeling that everything was kind of accepted, even if this new career that I had started, or this new kind of undertaking that I'd started, didn't work out. like it felt completely fine with that. And there was this total acceptance of what will be, like whatever will happen, in a way that I've never really experienced before, and in a way that I didn't have to try and do. Like I wasn't trying to detach from the outcome. It's just that there was an underlying acceptance, and there was also an underlying peace that everything will be okay no matter what happens. And there was a fear that came up that's kind of said, but you know what? Maybe if you're this relaxed about everything, then maybe your security will be threatened. You know, maybe this is gonna threaten your security because you're just so relaxed now, and you don't care about the outcome. You've accepted it. You've accepted whatever will be. This fear kind of nudged me and kind of was like, don't be so kind of, don't be so sure that everything's going to be okay, kind of thing. Like, you know, like maybe something really terrible will happen because you're just so detached from the outcome now, or any outcome. And I think maybe that fear kind of being somehow reintroduced was the end to that moment of I don't know, whatever you want to call that. And then I felt like afterwards gripped again by attachments and this sense of security and needing security and perhaps all the things that previously I had loosened up on. So I don't know if that was just kind of like a one-off thing, or whether like I'm going to go back in and it's going to be like these layers, like going into deeper layers of that. But we'll see. But I just wanted to do this video to kind of like lay it all out and really, I think, get it clear in my mind what took place and why I perhaps came out of it again. Because maybe next time I can really look at that fear and maybe even accept that, you know. I don't know. We'll see.